first, Mike, I want to start off with Bully Ray went on his podcast and he talked about Seth Rollins and how he feels like Seth Rollins is essentially maybe not a big enough star to stand on stage at the same time as The Rock, and that this moment might overshadow Seth Rollins a little bit. What are your feelings on Seth Rollins' ability to stand in a ring toe-to-toe with Dwayne Johnson, and how does he stand up, and do you agree with Bully Ray?
So I think there's not a right or wrong answer here, right? I mean, with Seth Rollins, in terms of the landscape of the WWE currently, he's a megastar, right? And they've built him to be that with this long World Heavyweight Championship run. In terms of him getting in the ring with The Rock, I mean, The Rock's The Rock. I mean, he's going to always surpass anybody that's standing with him in the ring. I mean, that's just the stature of who he is. In terms of like a match type or quality between him and Rollins, you know, we've seen Rollins go against different kinds of opponents and different kinds of techniques that they bring to the ring. So I think he is somebody that is a natural worker in the ring. I think he brings a lot of stuff to each individual match in terms of storytelling and different move sets that I think he could hang with The Rock. I think I can reference what you were listening to from Bully Ray as well. He mentioned that he wasn't initially a fan of the whole flashy outfits and the dancing and everything, which to an extent I can agree with that. You know, I don't mind the flashy outfits. I think the dancing could be a bit too much sometimes in terms of presentation, especially like this past week on Raw. I was kind of looking for a little bit more seriousness coming to the ring, but you know, he shifted gears and got serious in the promo. So he brings a lot to the table, man, and so does The Rock. So in terms of, you know, does he belong in the ring with The Rock? I would have to say, yeah.
So here's my opinion is I think we give The Rock this unfair advantage against everybody when we start to look back and we go nostalgic and we go, The Rock was phenomenal. The Rock played by a whole different set of rules than the guys that are wrestling today have to live by. The Rock was allowed to say whatever he wanted. He was allowed to be as offensive as he wanted. He was allowed to sexualize women. This was a time when all that shit was okay. And we've grown away from that as just a society and as far as wrestling goes. And now we're in an era where these wrestlers are expected to cut responsible promos. Seth Rollins is not allowed to just go out and wow the 35 to 45-year-old audience. He has to speak to the kids. He has to speak to women. He has to speak to adults. So I think there's this weird handicap, and Bully Ray coming from that era, I can understand why his mentality is that. But I think here's the thing. If we cut the ropes and cut the chains off of Seth Rollins, I think 100% he can stand in the ring with The Rock. I think Seth Rollins is one of the more clever people inside of WWE. I just don't think he crosses that line. The issue with everybody who gets in the ring with The Rock right now is The Rock continues to play by the old rules. The Rock gets the crowd chanting things that if anybody else had the crowd chanting those things, they'd go to the back and they'd be scolded. But because he's The Rock, he's allowed to play by those rules. I get it, right? The Rock is fucking huge. And he's probably, allegedly, probably on everything you can put in your body that makes you look unhuman. Because he doesn't look human. How do you go from a guy who was 6'4", 240 to now 6'4", probably 310, and it's all muscle? That's not, these are unfair expectations that we're putting on a guy, Seth Rollins, who has to wrestle 365 times a year. It's not fair to compare their stature. It's not fair to compare the way they talk in promos. I think Bully Ray did a disservice by comparing them that way. To get to what you said about being in the ring, do I think he belongs in the ring with The Rock? I think he's going to run circles around The Rock if he's in the ring with The Rock.
Yeah.
Like, I think, once again, we live in this nostalgic world where we think The Rock's going to be able to go, 10 minutes at best before he completely gasses out and it turns into The Rock just hitting those signature rock spots, spine buster, people's elbow, rock bottom, DDT. The Rock's not putting on a 5-star match. Seth Rollins can put on a 5-star match. So I think that sometimes there's these unfair, like, nostalgic references that get made to people when it's comparing apples to oranges. It's not apples to apples. So Seth Rollins was dropped into the middle of the Attitude Era. He would be just fine. It's the rule set that you're forced to play within, and we can't do this thing where we compare just John Cena to John Cena. Compare the John Cena when the chains were taken off and he was allowed to do the thugonomics and those kind of riskier things versus when they made the decision to go PG and John Cena had to adjust and do those things. I'm with you. I'm not a huge Seth Rollins person. I don't love the clothes and stuff, but I understand that's also not necessarily meant for me. I don't love the Joker the way some people love the Joker as a villain. And I think here's the deal. If they turn Seth Rollins loose and they let him play the Joker, that all makes sense. The eccentric costumes and all that stuff, he can handle. When they go after his shoes, he always comes back ready. When they go after his clothes, he always comes back ready. I feel like he goes jab for jab with Roman, and I think he can do the same thing with The Rock. It's whether or not he's allowed to play by the same rule book. And if The Rock gets to just come out and say whatever he wants, that's not fair. Versus if they take the reins off of Seth, I think he will be just fine. I honestly do. I don't think that's a fair comparison. I like what you said. I think we've seen Seth wrestle everybody, and I've never seen a Seth Rollins match that I've left and gone, oh, Seth didn't do that well. Like, that's not what we say about Seth Rollins. That's just not the MO for him. All right, Mike, 100%. What you got?